At first glance, it could have been any other blur tearing across the Caribbean. A 32-foot fiberglass speedboat, engine screaming, hull knifing through the evening chop at nearly 55 knots. No navigation lights, no radio calls, just 3 outboards roaring at full throttle and a dark blue tarp hiding whatever was piled on deck. But this was no fishing boat. It was a go-fast, the favored ride of drug cartels, packed low and heavy with contraband and gambling, everything on speed. Its crew thought they could slip unseen through one of the busiest smuggling corridors in the hemisphere. They were wrong, because dead ahead sat the last vessel any trafficker wants to meet, the USS George Washington, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier leading a fully armed strike group. What happened over the next 2 hours would become a textbook case in modern naval security, high-tech detection, and the seamless blend of U.S. Navy power with Coast Guard law enforcement. A floating city that sees everything. The George Washington isn't just a warship, it's a floating city. More than 5,000 sailors live and work on board, launching and maintaining squadrons of FA-18 Super Hornets, helicopters, and surveillance aircraft. Surrounding her that night were 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, forming the strike group's protective shell. Together, they create one of the most sophisticated defense networks on Earth. Their radar systems, including the Army-Navy SPY-6, sweep the sea and sky for hundreds of miles. Sonar arrays probe the depths for submarines. Air defense interceptors stand ready to knock down missiles or hostile aircraft before they ever come close. On this night, the smallest blip on their screens, a low-slung speedboat skipping across the waves, became the one that mattered most. No U.S. carrier sails alone for good reason. These ships are power projection platforms and irresistible targets. Letting an unidentified vessel get close is unthinkable. Rules of engagement demand clear steps. Warn, deter, intercept if needed. That tiny boat was about to run straight through all of them. The first warnings. Go out. At 6:50 p.m., bridge officers on the carrier broadcast their first radio hail. Unidentified vessel, this is Warship 273. You are entering restricted naval operations. Alter course immediately. Silence. A second, sharper warning followed. Still nothing. Either the smugglers couldn't hear over the engine roar, or they simply didn't care. On the destroyer United States ship Mason, a 5-inch deck gun swiveled toward the intruder, not firing, just tracking, a silent signal that things were escalating. In the Combat Information Center, officers weighed the legal line. This was international water, 180 miles off Venezuela. They couldn't just open fire because the boat might be smuggling, but self-defense is always allowed if a vessel poses imminent danger. Every mile the go-fast closed made that line thinner. The Coast Guard joins the fight. This is where the U.S. Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment came in. These small teams of boarding specialists ride Navy ships for exactly this scenario. The Navy brings overwhelming muscle. The Coast Guard brings the legal authority to stop, search, and seize. The Law Enforcement Detachment commander aboard the Mason gave the call. Escalate presence. The order went out to launch intercept aircraft. On the George Washington's flight deck, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, call signs Lancer 71 and Lancer 72, spun up and lifted into the fading Caribbean light. Originally designed for anti-submarine warfare, these Seahawks are also superb surface interceptors. Fast, agile, and packed with sensors. Eyes in the sky? Within minutes, the helicopters were over the target's bearing, night vision goggles cutting through dusk. From 500 feet, the crew had no doubt. Narrow hull, triple outboards, men hunched low, and a tarp concealing bulky cargo. Not fishermen, not tourists. A cartel runner. The pilots hailed the boat. Unidentified vessel, this is Lancer 71. You are approaching a United States warship. Stop your engines immediately. No response. Next came a loud hailer booming in English and Spanish. Still no compliance. Then a green laser from Lancer 72 slashed across the water. A highly visible but non-lethal signal equivalent to flashing police lights. Below, Coast Guard boarding teams strapped on armor and prepped their rigid hull inflatable boats. Carbine rifles slung, helmets down, They were ready to launch if the skiff refused to stop. But the smugglers still bet on speed, zigzagging and throwing up rooster tails to shake pursuit. What they didn't count on? Helicopters don't tire, and radars don't blink. Closing the trap. By now, every sensor in the strike group was locked on the go fast. Its heat signature burned white on infrared. Its course and speed updated second by second. Escape was mathematically impossible. At 7:03 p.m., two RHIBS splashed from the Mason and rocketed toward the fleeing skiff. Overhead, Lancer 71 hung in a low hover, spotlight blazing. Lancer 72 orbited high, ready to provide overwatch. The Coast Guard teams moved like a single trained organism, closing, flanking, shouting clear commands in Spanish. Detenga su barco ahora! Stop your boat now! Finally, hands went up. The smugglers knew the chase was over. The boarding team vaulted onto the deck, quickly separating crew from cargo and securing the engines. Within moments, zip ties clicked, weapons stayed slung, and the boat was under control, all captured live on helicopter video for later evidence. Turning a seizure into a legal case. On deck, the Coast Guard and Navy worked methodically. The tarp came off to reveal dozens of tightly wrapped bales, the kind traffickers use for cocaine or other narcotics. Field test kits quickly showed positive results. Conservative estimates put the haul at several hundred kilograms, worth millions on the street. Every bundle was photographed, numbered, sealed, and logged to preserve chain of custody. Detainees received medical checks and were read their rights in Spanish and English. Sailors searched for hidden compartments, GPS units, or transponders. The Seahawk's video feed was saved to a secure evidence server. By 8:10 p.m., less than 2 hours after the first radar contact, the carrier strike group had the skiff secured, the smugglers detained, and the contraband inventoried. No shots fired, no casualties. A textbook intercept. Why the Navy uses carriers for more than combat. Some might wonder, why send a supercarrier to chase smugglers? The answer isn't just about one boat. It's about deterrence and presence. In 2025, the Caribbean has become a contested maritime arena. Venezuela's ongoing economic collapse fuels drug trafficking networks that launch from hidden coastal coves. Go-fasts, cheap, powerful fiberglass boats with 3 or 4 huge outboards, can sprint past 60 knots and once exploited gaps in detection. But technology has caught up. Modern radars like the SPY-6 can now track even small, low-profile targets against heavy sea clutter. Airborne sensors and forward-looking infrared cameras make hiding nearly impossible once a helicopter is overhead. Yet detection isn't enough. International law limits what the Navy alone can do in neutral waters. Without Coast Guard detachments, a destroyer can shadow or warn but not legally seize cargo or arrest crews. Adding law enforcement detachment turns raw military power into enforceable maritime law. And deploying a carrier strike group sends an unmistakable strategic signal. The U.S. can project overwhelming force anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And it's watching. Escalation is real. And getting riskier for traffickers. This seizure wasn't an isolated event. Just days before, U.S. Southern Command confirmed kinetic strikes, meaning real firepower, against armed smuggling boats off Venezuela after traffickers opened fire on patrol planes. Reuters reported that in September 2025, multiple cartel vessels were destroyed when they tried to fight back. The message is clear: the era when speed alone could beat enforcement is ending. Smugglers face not just faster detection, but layered response options. Warnings, intercepts, helicopters, boarding teams, and, if they choose violence, lethal force. For cartels, pushing this close to a U.S. carrier is not only reckless, it risks escalation they cannot win. Will the cartels learn? Will this stop traffickers from ever testing a U.S. carrier again? Probably not forever. Smuggling networks adapt quickly. But each high-profile seizure raises the cost and risk of running drugs near a U.S. strike group. More importantly, it shows the Caribbean is no longer an unpoliced highway. What was once a smuggler's playground is now a sensor-rich, helicopter-patrolled law-enforced battle space. One wrong heading can trigger a response involving destroyers, cruisers, aircraft, and armed boarding teams, all in under 2 hours. For the crew of that go-fast, the lesson came hard. Speed is no match for a carrier strike group. And for everyone watching, it's proof that modern naval power isn't just about war, it's about control, deterrence, and keeping one of the world's busiest smuggling routes just a little less lawless. If you found this video as fascinating as we did, the tech, the tactics, and the sheer precision of a US carrier strike group, hit that like and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us out on the water, bringing you the untold stories that shape the seas.